Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another teacher vlog. Congratulations for everybody who is a college student, at least at UT. We've made it halfway through the semester. That's a big thing. So I want to shout out that we've made it halfway through, which is kind of crazy to think about because there's a lot of work that still has to be done, but we're almost there. And so that's kind of it's a little comforting for me. So I hope it is as comforting for you guys as it is for me. So today's topic is something very interesting because it is actually an open topic. I get to choose what I want to talk about. And I spent a lot of time thinking about possible topics I wanted to talk about. I looked at some of the suggested ones on the forum and I thought, well, why am I worried too much about my thoughts whenever I can think about how I'm impacting the most important part of being a teacher? And what is the most important about being a teacher? And like education as a whole? The students. Yes, that is the correct answer. The idea of student-centered learning is something that's really important to me, and making sure that the students are number one priority at all times. It does not matter, if you aren't thinking about your students, your lessons aren't going to be quality and stuff like that. So I figured, hey, let's talk about the students and and for me personally, how that works for me and what I'm seeing in the classrooms as I observe and what I've sort of been learning over the semester. As a result of me deciding that the focus should not be on myself but on the students, I decided to get some guest stars for for some sections of this video. So let's go ahead and begin with the first question we will be answering.
What tactics do you use to build rapport with students?
What an excellent question. And I think it is so relevant because that is something that I've been focusing a lot on while observing. And the tactics that I'm sort of observing and am trying to absorb are as follows. One, I love to engage with my own personal sense of humor. I love to just exhibit confidence with students, because if I'm confident in what I'm saying, then that just kind of helps build some sort of relationship, even if it's just in the tiniest way. Just me being confident in what I'm saying and what I'm teaching, and in how I present myself, even whenever, there's been a couple times that I've made jokes and they flop, and they're not like, and the jokes just simply don't land with students, and that's totally okay, and I don't let it stop me, is the big thing. I own up to who I am, and that can sort of, that air of confidence automatically makes students more intrigued with me as a teacher. Additionally, though, I do cater my sense of humor to who I'm teaching. So that way, if students are more inclined for a bit more of like a roast style humor, I might throw a bit more jib jabs out with them. But if they're not more inclined for that, then I might just go for a bit more classic style of humor and stuff like that. Additionally, I think it's really important to take a personal stake/interest in your students' lives, which is something that I didn't understand at first. I understood the idea of it, but I didn't feel comfortable doing that because I wanted to give my students privacy. And while I still think that is important, something I've learned is that you can sort of have it both ways. You can ask students, and then they are, at least in terms of high school, which is where I'm observing, they are at an age where they are comfortable enough and they're like knowledgeable enough to say, hey, I'm comfortable sharing this, or I'm not comfortable sharing that. And it's also like common sense. So what I've realized is that it's totally okay for me to ask about things, because if it's not something they're comfortable sharing, they won't. But almost always they're more than comfortable to talk about things going on in their lives. And so I've been, like, even through just casual conversation, very recently when I was observing, there was a bit of free time that the teacher had given them because they were opening a show that day. And so the teacher was like, I don't want to do too much teaching because we've worked so hard over the past few weeks on the show. I want to give us a chill day, which I think is awesome. I love that. That's another thing I love doing, is chill days. And so it was awesome being able to do that, because the students started playing Monopoly and they were like, Mr. Seabury, would you want to play Monopoly with us? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. And they're like, I mean, we have the extra token. And so I was like, deal me in. And then I ended up playing Monopoly with them, and it was honestly so much fun because I just got to like talk to them and see what was going on in their lives and like understand them on a more personal level. And even if it was just through a silly game of Monopoly, that sort of buy-in was enough for them to sort of grow a connection with me, which I really appreciated. So yeah, I would say that tactics are humor is a big one, and then taking a personal interest/stake. And you have to be genuine. You can't do it with the front. They can tell. You have to be genuine with the interest that you have in them. And so I would say literally just be be interested in them, be interested in them and their growth. And granted, that's, it seems obvious because teachers should be doing that, but some teachers don't. Some teachers are very, very much, they build a barrier and that works for them. But for me, I am, and this is what I'm seeing as well for my CT, and I'm seeing it work, is the idea that let down the barrier a little bit. You want to keep it up because you want to maintain professionality. You don't want your students to be your best friends, but you do want students to trust you, because that, one, makes your job as a teacher a lot easier, but two, it's important for them to feel safe and in an environment, in a school environment, especially in theater, where we are being so vulnerable, and it requires a lot of trust to do that. So yeah, next question.
How do you memorize your students' names?
What an amazing question. And I love it because it is a lot more complicated than you might think. When it comes to memorizing students' names, it's something that I realized was a big, big thing, especially for building rapport, and I didn't quite mention it in the last part, but building rapport with students, you should know your students' names. And I'm a teacher who likes to memorize my students' names within 2 days. I give myself 2 days. Day one is literally just like me meeting them, getting to know them, and then the second day is me like testing the waters with guessing their names. And I'm always honest. I'm like, hey, I can be really, really bad at memorizing names sometimes because there's so much information in my head. And so if I get your name wrong, please understand. But I try to because even the kids will have problems with that sometimes. And so I want to make it known that hey, it's okay to make mistakes. It's a really good buy-in for students who are like are perfectionists and don't want to make mistakes, is if I'm willing to make a mistake when it comes to names, then they might be willing to make mistakes when it comes to being bold on stage or making bold choices, which I think is very, very good. And you want to be willing to make mistakes in life. But that being said, when it comes to names, I can struggle sometimes. I know for my observations, I have been horrible about it because I only see them 2 times a week. Normally, whenever I would teach over the summer, I would be able to memorize names because I'd see them all day, every day for a full week. And so by the time it hit Wednesday, I was fully memorized without any struggle. But I'm still working on some of the students' names. That being said, I would say that a big tactic is taking personal stake, just having casual conversation. For observation, it's really easy to just be a fly on the wall, and that's great, but you're not building rapport with students. And so when it comes to, thankfully for my CT, they've been very much we want you to get involved, which I love. I love being involved with the students in an environment where it feels safe to do so. It's not like the CT is offloading work on me. It is they're teaching, and then they're also, I think that it's important for you to get involved. So get involved where you can and where you feel comfortable, which I love. So I'm trying my best to learn names through engagement, just by having casual conversation and being oh, by the way, what is your name? Another thing that I'm going to probably do whenever I teach, and this is something that I'm sort of trying to practice whenever I observe, is sort of having a data bank of names in my head. So I just knowing all the possible names that are in the room. Something that I've done is I've asked the CT many times oh my gosh, who's that person, or what give me the name. And so or give me the name of the people. I have my CT always reference names even if the person isn't in the room, so that way I can try to fill that data bank in my head. Another thing is just I said, being bold, taking a chance with the names, even if you get it wrong. Yeah, it's okay to make a mistake as a teacher, especially with names. I think it's totally fine. And so I think it is better to make a mistake with somebody's name than to do the thing where you're oh, pal, friend, then because that can be they're so smart and they know oh, you don't know my name, and that can be really disheartening and can sort of break that trust barrier. So yeah, that's kind of my tactics when it comes to names, and I do think it is very, very important to memorize names. Final question of the day.
What activities engage your students the most?
This definitely leans a bit more into the student-centered teaching that I talked about at the beginning of the video, and I think it is super, super important to make sure that we are staying student-centered. And so because of that, we want to make sure things are engaging. And something that I've been sort of trying to observe is what kind of activities are really getting students to engage. And it's been interesting. One, I'm sort of hopping out of frame, my bad. One big thing is activities where they talk to each other, which has been a really, really big game changer for me. Whenever I did my micro teach, that's something I didn't talk about. I did my micro teach recently. And so that was very, very fun because it was literally 20, 25, I think it was supposed to be 20 minutes. My lesson ended up being 30 minutes because I kept yapping. And so I had them talk to each other about different stage types. And that was really, really fun because they loved it, and thankfully they were able to critique me afterwards, which was a little daunting, but I was super grateful for it because it was so helpful. But they told me like, yeah, we really enjoy activities where we get to talk to each other. We get to just, even if it's just like about a small thing, just getting to engage with other students can be really helpful because one, we like talking to each other, we're sociable, and we want to get to know each other better. But two, like some of us might not know each other very well, and it's important for us to get to talk to each other even if we don't talk to each other normally. And so activities where we are forced not only to talk to each other but talk to people who we maybe would not normally talk to can be like, oh, a nice little challenge of our social barriers, which I think is super fun. Another activity type that they really love, at least from what I'm observing, is activities that get them busy and get them moving. Activities where they're just sitting down can be kind of boring, and they acknowledge this wasn't necessarily a thing for my microteach, but I've sort of talked to them about like, oh, what do you find interesting in the classroom? And they have been like, oh yeah, we like don't like activities where we just sit around. And honestly, I get that. I was the same exact way when I was in school. I hated activities where I just sat in a chair and I watched. I like lecture worked sometimes, but there was there was always a threshold where it was too much and I just would lose interest entirely. So that being said, try to find activities that can get them engaged, where they can literally practice what they're doing. That was something else that I tried whenever I talked about the pantomime lesson that I did a few weeks ago, not necessarily for a microteach, but just for fun, was the idea of getting them active, getting them moving, and stuff like that. So I think it's super important. And then another activity type that I think is super important is, goodness, I can't think of what it's called. I'm going to take a second to think about it because I think it's important to, be able to think about things, and I'm sort of yapping right now. But another activity type that I think is super important is to just, to get them engaged, is make sure you're talking about things that are interesting to them. Obviously, we want to be able to address TEKS, and I know that's a lot easier said than done, and we do have to cover certain topics that they might not find interesting. But the big thing that I'm sort of learning, this is the end, I found it, is that students, like, you have to find a buy-in for them. And to do that, you have to do broad strokes. It's something that I sort of realized in my curriculum planning more than my observations, but even in my observations is the idea that you have to be able to, you don't want to just pick one topic and hone in on it super hard, because if a student isn't interested in that topic and you just spend like a week talking about this one topic, then they're not gonna be interested for an entire week, and that's not engaging, and that's super boring, and that's not student-centered at all. What you want to do is do a big broad stroke, so that way there's little buy-ins everywhere, so that way every student can find at least one buy-in for a lesson or a unit, and then that's how they get engaged. And it's super important to do. And yeah, that's something that I've been sort of learning over my observation time. Okay, I think that's all the time we have for today. I want to say thank you to all of my guest stars for those wonderful questions, and hopefully this video was entertaining for you. Once again, if you have anything that in your brain you're like, I want to chat about this, feel free to leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, or maybe even subscribe if that's something that you're interested in doing. And yeah, it's been super fun to get to observe. Once again, congratulations to all my college students who have made it halfway through their semester. Keep pushing, keep making it. We're gonna make it today. We're gonna make it this semester. And so, yeah, it's been really fun, and I'm super excited to keep making videos, to keep learning, and to keep pushing myself in ways that I haven't pushed myself before. So, catch y'all on the flip side. Peace out, y'all.